Good morning, everybody. Hope y'all are well. Wanted to share something that I was reminded of on my walk this morning. Years ago, I had a friend, and this was probably, 13, 15 years ago, I had a friend who was a personal trainer. And she spent the summer with me, just kind of helping me get back on track and figure out a plan that was going to work for me. And, we had just had our kids. I was all over the place. It was crazy, but I spent the summer with her, and it was so great being exposed to somebody that valued health and nutrition and fitness and exercise, but yet had all of that grounded in the Word of God and in the ways of the kingdom. It wasn't, and everything that she taught me, I mean, she pushed me, let me tell you, but nothing she ever did was from this harsh place of discipline, it wasn't a yoke. She taught me how to do all of those things from a place of freedom and from a place of love. But I remember asking her, because I was kind of redoing my whole nutritional plan and just kind of re-looking at everything. And I remember asking her, I said, Margie, how do you keep track? Like, it seems like every article I read, I'll start moving forward and it's like, oh, eat this. And then literally just a couple of paragraphs down, it's like, no, that's the worst thing you could ever eat. I'm like, how do you keep track? And how do you know what to choose and what not? Like, who do you follow? Like, there's so many conflicting opinions out there. And she said, Linda, just go back to what the Word of God said. I'm like, oh, of course. And she goes, what did God have to say about that food? Did he ordain it for food? Did he ordain it to be good? Is it something that he actually recommended that we stay away from? That it would, not be healthy? And I was like, of course, and on the third day of creation in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, it says, that God created all of the trees, all of the fruits, all of the vegetables, all of the herbs, everything that had within it the seed to reproduce itself. And he looked upon all of it and he said, this is good. This is good. Then he said, all of this I've given to you for food. I've given it to you for your health. I've given it to you for your nutrition. God knew what he was doing, and he knew what he placed inside every single one of those fruits, vegetables, herbs, plants, seeds, all of it. And he said, I've given all of this to you for food. And then he expanded that later in Genesis 9 after the flood. And she goes, sometimes you've got to be careful. We've got to be careful that we don't pay attention to everything that we read. And especially when you have somebody who is a, teacher, instructor, influencer, that you don't pay attention to somebody or take lightly what they say when they're calling something that God ordained to be good and they call it evil or they call it bad for you. She goes, you have to kind of go back to what the Word of God said, and I was like, that is so true. And that still stands true today. I mean, here I am 15 years later, and God reminded me of that this morning when I was on my walk, because recently I had watched a video or something, and it was this person who I actually have learned a lot from nutrition-wise, but some of what they were saying, I mean, they were calling like a lot of different fruits and vegetables and even some nuts and stuff, like they were calling them, if I could kind of put it this way, they were calling them evil. They were calling them bad for you. And I'm like, are they though? Because God actually created those things for food. Now, mind you, we live in a day and age where not everything that we think is food is actually food. A lot of what we are given and a lot of what we are provided was actually created in a lab, So we have to be careful with that. And honestly, a lot of the foods that we eat now have been modified, I don't want to get on that train. That's a whole nother thing, but there is a lot of truth in that. And a lot of those chemicals and a lot of those things have actually produced horrible things for our body, and our bodies react to them. And a lot of times that's why our bodies do not receive. Our bodies actually reject a lot of the foods that God ordained for us to have, not because they are bad, but either because of what we have done to them or because we don't know how to eat them properly. And I think there's a lot of value. And now, let me just say, I'm not a nutritionist, okay? I'm not a medical professional on all of this. I'm learning along the way. And I find a lot of value in going back and saying, okay, wait a minute, was this food something that God produced? Was this something that He intended for our good? God knows exactly what He put in everything, and He knows the seasons of the year that He releases the fruits of these things. You know, that when certain things are eating according to the rhythm of the year and what God intended us to eat in every season. See, and sometimes even that we miss because, again, so many of our things are created in labs. You want strawberries out of season? You can get them in December because they were created in a lab. But is that really what God intended? Anyways, I just wanted to share that. You know, in our day, especially, we can get so hyped up. A lot of people grab a hold of that scripture and, oh, in the last days, people are going to call what is good evil and what is evil good. I'm like, that actually applies to our food, too. To a lot of the things that we consume and a lot of things that we put in our bodies. Gotta be careful. I know there's people that have allergies to certain things. I'm not trying to be insensitive to that. But here's what I have learned. And, of course, you know, people have to walk through their processes, and if there's things that the body is rejecting, here's kind of where I'm at with that. I feel like we have to ask ourselves why is the body rejecting that? Because I've learned that my body has actually started to receive a lot of the things that I wasn't able to eat a long time ago, but it's because of the changes that I made to my nutrition. That's not always the case, but I'm like, let's just be careful that we're not calling what God intended to be good, what He declared is good, and that we're not calling what He said is good evil, that we're not calling it bad. He's our ultimate authority, and He knows what our bodies need, and He designed it all for our benefit, for our health, and for our good.